Hi, David Mandy here. This is a different call than normal for our investors. This is a pretty sophisticated group that's come on for Contango ORE. Mostly all professional investors, smaller group, but really appreciate your attendance. Contango ORE, as many of you know, trades under the symbol CTGO on the OTC. We're pleased to have Rick Van Nieuwenhuis presenting today, President and CEO. Many of you already know Rick, but I'll just give the bare outline of his bio for those that are new to the story. Rick is 40 years of experience in the industry. Before joining Contango ORE in January 2020, he was President and Chief Executive Officer of Trilogy Metals. Trilogy is a company which was created in 2012 as a spin-out from Nova Gold, a well-known company Rick founded over 20 years ago after his years with Placer Dome. Nova Gold's currently finalizing permits for their 40 million ounce Donlin Gold project in Southwest Alaska with their partner Barrick Gold, now the world's largest gold company. Previous to his role as founder, president, and CEO, as I said, of Nova Gold, he held the position of vice president of exploration, Placer Dome, between 1990 and 1997. Rick has an international perspective, but more importantly, he brings years of working experience and knowledge of Alaska to Contango. So on that note, it's a pleasure to turn the call over to Rick.
Well, thanks, David. Appreciate the introduction. I've got my camera turned on there, and share screen, and
looks good, Rick.
I'll get rid of myself. So, thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate you being on the call. There we go. Now we got in presentation mode. So I want to take you through kind of an intro to Contango ORE, but then also give you an update on some of our recent activities here. We obviously will be making forward-looking statements, and I do draw your attention to our cautionary language around resources and non-GAAP measures. So high-level overview of the company. Contango had outlined a 1.3 million ounce measured and indicated gold resource averaging about 4 grams per ton gold in eastern Alaska, east central Alaska, not too far from the Yukon border. The project is located right along the Alaska Highway, so it doesn't have the infrastructure issues that a lot of projects in Alaska have. It literally is just off the road, about 10 miles. It is on private land owned by one of the Alaska Native tribes called the Tetlin Alaska Tribe. We have a business arrangement with them. They'll receive a royalty. So it is effectively private land. I mean, it is private land. The most recent development is last end of September, we formed a business partnership with Kinross. And we did that to be able to utilize their mill and tailings facility at the Fort Knox operation, which has been going on. The operation has been ongoing for about 25 years. So it's a very well-established operation in Alaska. And what that allows us to do is to fast-track development and production of our Peak Gold deposit on a well-executed plan overseen by one of Alaska's top operating companies with low capital, because we're not building a mill and we're not building a tailings facility. So yeah, very easily executable plan. So I'll come back to that more as we go through the presentation. This image shows an overview of the deposit. There's actually two main deposits. They're right next to each other. We call the main Peak Gold deposit and the North Peak Gold deposit. They're located on top of a hill in a series of hills around Tetland. We formed a 70-30 joint venture with Kinross. Royal Gold had been our partner, and so Royal Gold exited with their royalty, gold and silver royalty, and they sold their 40% interest to Kinross, and we sold half of our interest to Kinross to give Kinross 70% interest. and they are, of course, the controlling and controlling partner and the manager of the project. So we transitioned to that. Our folks helped out for the first 3-4 months of the joint venture, and then we've completely now transitioned to Kinross being the operator. And again, the reason we've done this is to utilize the underutilized capacity of the Fort Knox mill. Kinross's guidance is that they'll be able to produce about 1 million ounces of gold, gold equivalent ounces, and that's gold plus silver, over a 4.5-5 year time period. Capital costs are indicated to be about $110 million. That's about, it's less than a third of what they would have been if we built a mill and a tailings facility on site to develop the ore body at similar rates of production. They expect operations to begin in 2024 after permitting is completed. Our share of production would be about 65,000 ounces, gold equivalent ounces, at a cash cost, all-in sustaining cash cost of $750 an ounce. So that's a very, probably in the lower third of the cash costs on a global basis. We have an $18 million program that's ongoing right now. I'll show you some photos. We plan to start permitting in the second half of this year, probably in the June-July timeframe, with a feasibility study to be completed in early 2022, and then construction starting in 2023, and production then a year later. Again, not a lot to build on site, since we're not building a mill and we're not building a tailings facility. So again, a very easy executable plan. We have a lot of land under our control here, about 850,000 acres, and we're, of course, in the heart of the Tintina Gold Belt, which I'll talk more about. Just a quick overview of the company. We're traded OTC on the OTCQB exchange, which isn't a great exchange, and we are pursuing an uplisting to the New York Stock Exchange American, and we meet all the qualifications. We've just got to get our application through. And one of the things that happened with the Biden administration is they did adopt the new rules for mining and exploration reporting issuers. So we have to complete a what's called an SK 1300 report, which is equivalent to the Canadian 43101. So we're in the process of doing that. I'm hoping to receive that copy of that report early next week, and then we should be able to wrap that into our S1 filing with the SEC. So it's underway. It's a process. Anything with involving the government, of course, always takes longer than you think it should, and but we'll get there. I'm confident of that. We have only 6 million shares outstanding. Our share roster is about 40% institutional, close to 40% retail, and about a little over 20% held by directors and officers. So we're very much aligned with shareholders in terms of creating value. No debt and no warrants outstanding. We'll be upgrading the cash number. We're probably a little under $30 million now as we continue to spend dollars in the first quarter here, mainly towards advancing the Peak Gold project. We certainly have sufficient cash to get all the way to a construction decision, which we expect to happen in 2023. And I'm already in discussions with people who want to provide us debt once we get to the point of actually going to construction. So we have a tight share structure, but I don't see a need to issue a lot more shares. But you know, we've got a great company here in terms of its corporate structure. So just to go over the Peak Gold project model assumptions, and these are Kinross's assumptions, and they paid $93 million to acquire their 70% interest from the two parties. So this isn't an earn-in situation where they can sort of take their time. They've spent nearly $100 million to date, and their board and their shareholders expect results. So I think you can see and expect this project to continue to move at a very rapid rate. Their guidance, again, $110 million of capital to get this thing going. Again, about a third of what it would have cost to if we built a mill and tailings facility on site. So obviously that lowers our contribution. The dollars we're spending now, the $18 million program that we're spending right now, it comes off of that 110. So I'm expecting when we actually finally get to a construction decision in 2023 that we'll need about $25 million extra dollars to get us across the finish line. So not a huge amount of money for a project that's going to produce 65,000 ounces of gold a year. The head grade is, we're going to use an elevated head grade, and when you do that, your all-in sustaining costs are about $750 a ton. And again, you'll produce about 1 million ounces of gold a year. 65,000 ounces would be our share. I'll talk about a little bit later our 100% owned lands that we own adjacent to the joint venture lands. But I think the most important thing that we stay focused on is getting the ounces into production as quickly as we can. I mentioned cash costs. So here's where we sit on the latest cash cost curve for 2021. You know, kind of in that bottom third, roughly bottom third of the cash cost. So, and with obviously spot price of gold's off about $100, but we still have a pretty, you know, very, very good margin, obviously. So the reason this all works is because we are, as I said earlier, just right off the Alaska Highway. We're looking south here towards the Canadian border, and back behind the bushes there, you can see the top of the hill I pointed out earlier. That's where the Peak Gold deposit is. It's a little more than 10 miles off the road, off the highway, with an exploration access road. And there you can drive your pickup truck up there with no problem. You turn around and you're about 250 miles from the Fort Knox mill on a paved highway. So this is what makes this possible. We have all that infrastructure in place, and of course then there's the Fort Knox mill itself, which is underutilized. I'll talk a bit more about that. Just a little bit on Alaska. Obviously a rich mining history. Mining is probably the second largest industry in the state in terms of its GDP. Alaska is the second largest gold producer in the United States, with 6 large-scale active mines and lots of small-scale alluvial miners. Stable taxes and regulatory environment provides about 4,600 jobs directly and almost 10,000 indirect jobs. So it's a significant part of the state's economy, and I'm confident will continue to be as we go into the future here. A lot of exploration activity going on both sides of the border. The geology, of course, doesn't stop at the Canadian border. Lots of activity on the Yukon side with big porphyries like the Casino deposit hosting about 14 million ounces of gold. Higher grade deposits like Coffee, over 2 million ounces now being developed by Newmont, and lots of other exploration activities. Victoria mine just recently opened up. So and similar, probably a little bit behind is Alaska, but a lot of exploration activity going on the Alaska side of the what we call the Yukon-Tanana terrain, which is this big belt between the Tintina Fault and the Denali Fault that runs all the way through the Yukon and Alaska. At the deposit site itself, I'm not going to get into a lot of geology here, but basically the Yukon-Tanana is a series of metamorphic rocks. And in our part of the terrain, you've got these calcareous schists, limestones that are interbedded with the quartz muscovite schist and the quartz chlorite schist. And these are the rocks that, when they are adjacent to productive intrusions, get scarified and form these massive replacements, massive sulfide replacement deposits that contain a high amount of gold. Sometimes copper, and we have a little bit of copper. We're not going to recover copper because the Fort Knox mill doesn't recover copper, only the gold. It's not really leaving much behind. It's probably only maybe 2 or 3% of the value is in the copper. Most of it's in the gold. So here's the Tetland Leases. This is the joint venture lands. Involves the Tetland land itself, which is private land owned by the Tetland tribe. It's a bit of a unique situation in the United States and in Alaska specifically. Most large blocks of land are owned by corporations. In this case, the corporation is the tribe. We have a business arrangement with the tribe. We've had it for well over 10 years now. We've developed a very good, strong working relationship, as we've done with all of our companies working in Alaska. It's about 675,000 acres, which is the size of Rhode Island. It's a big piece of territory. And then there's a little block of state claims that we, excuse me, have included in the joint venture, and that's outlined in blue here on this map. And then the pink lands are state mining claims that Contango owns 100% of, and they were not contributed to the Kinross joint venture. So we own those 100%. And I'll talk a little bit about those a little bit later on. So the Peak Gold resource, this is the resource statement that Kinross put out. It's essentially the same one that we are working on our SK 1300. We have the same QP, so ours will look identical to this one, 9.2 million tons of just over 4 grams, mostly in the measured and indicated category. So very high quality deposit right at surface. And again, as I mentioned, the plan is to truck this ore, mine it, crush it, and put it in highway trucks, and then truck it to the Fort Knox mill, which is pictured here. Been in operation for 25 years. It's based about an 18 million ton a year capacity mill that's running at about 10 million tons, so just a little over half capacity. We'll add 1 million tons of high-grade ore, averaging about 6 grams, which is about 10 times the grade that Fort Knox normally runs through it. That actually has some benefits to the Fort Knox ore, so it'll be a net benefit to Fort Knox as well as ourselves, obviously, for not having to build a mill in the tailings facility. Our ore body starts right at the surface. There's a little bit of windblown loess and sand over the top of it, but otherwise it's just literally about 5-10 feet below the surface. We have 2 ore bodies, as I described, the main peak on the to the west and the North Peak on the east. They dip in opposite directions, and so when they were drilled, the infill drilling basically fanned out from a center point and went in opposite directions, which resulted in the middle of the 2 deposits not being well drilled. There's a few holes in here, and there's some sniffs of mineralization here and there, but it's certainly one of the high priority targets for finding additional resources that we plan to do this year. I mentioned we have an $18 million program ongoing right now. The lion's share of that program is infill drilling to get to transfer indicated resources into measured, so we can put detailed month-to-month mine plan together with and characterize the ore as oxide, mixed, and sulfide. We have very good metallurgy on this deposit. We have over 90% recovery of gold. But this program that we're on, that's ongoing right now, will probably go until about June, July, and then that will be all directed at sort of internal drilling and metallurgy and geotechnical work and that. And then we'll start an exploration program of roughly $3 million to look for additional resources and get those incorporated into the feasibility study. One of the main points of this program this year, this summer, is to get the project ready for permitting. So that's a lot of the work that's being done is to support the permitting. So idea of how many tons per day you're mining, how many tons of ore, how many tons of waste, what are the characteristics, all the environmental attributes that go along with that. So this shows kind of literally where we're drilling in the pit, the infill drilling, and then which is that more dense pattern, and then the drilling into the high wall for hydrology and for geotech. Metallurgy drilling is actually mostly, I think it's all done now, so the detailed test work is underway for that as well. So as I mentioned, I think our plan is to have permitting starting in the second half of this year, probably the July, August timeframe. The program, as I mentioned, is ongoing right now. It's warmed up a little bit the last week, but a week ago or so it was about 30 below, but we can drill out here year round. We've got 2 drill rigs turning right now, and you can see they just put a tent around everything, and the drillers stay pretty much pretty warm and pretty toasty in there. And we are all set up on our facility here just off the Alaska Highway again there. This is our facility to log and house all the core. So we're very well set up for logging and cutting the core and the sampling and all that. That's ongoing right now. A lot of local help works here year round with us, and like I said, we've been doing this for 10 years, so we're well established in the community here. So just a little bit on exploration. This is a big area. This is a lion-sized piece of real estate in the heart of the Tintina Gold Belt. And just to put it in context, the Fort Knox Pit is located on this map, and our pit will be about 1/10 the size of the Fort Knox Pit, but about 10 times the grade. You can see the Fort Knox land package here, 58,000 acres, and then we've got 10 times that amount of acreage in the Tetland lease. So just a tremendous amount of real estate to explore here. Again, the slide here shows the Peak and North Peak deposits, and then a host of exploration targets around the two known deposits. And again, this is all on private land owned by the Tetland tribe. This map shows, as part of the database that we have, a very, very extensive database in geochemistry, in geology, in geophysics, that is really focused on this area, roughly 5 kilometers around the deposit, the known deposit. You can see in black there is the North Peak and Peak deposits, about 800 meters long and 100 to 200 meters wide. They're pretty small deposits, but they're very high grade. And they do kind of form in pods, and we're about 4 kilometers of strike length between the known deposits on the top of the hill, where they basically outcrop, and we're down towards the Toke River Valley, where they tend to be under alluvial and fluvial cover. We still see a geochemical expression there, and the structural grain and geophysics shows that there's a structural corridor through there. So we'll continue to explore along that corridor, as well as on some of the other geochemical anomalous areas. We call the discovery zone, that goes from discovery down to all the different 7 o'clock C and 0 o'clock. That's a structural trend that certainly needs a lot more drilling, and as is the saddle area, where there's a very strong geochemical anomaly in higher level rocks. They're up in the volcanics there, so you're a little higher level. And there's been some drilling there with some sniffs of gold, so we'll certainly be testing some of that area more as we go forward here. But the main event again is going to be right around the known deposits, and just immediately adjacent, if you will, along strike, down dip. And then we've got the rest of the 675,000 acres to explore. All of what we were looking at just a minute ago is in that little circle there. That's where 95% of the effort has been directed in terms of exploring this big land package. And then, of course, adjacent to that, we have our 100% owned lands at Hona, Eagle, and what we call the Triple Z prospect. I'll just spend just a very short period of time. We've got a well-defined copper gold porphyry system identified at Triple Z, surface geochem for both copper and gold, and a nice IP target that we've done good targeting work on. We are waiting to drill. We've done a little bit of drilling here. You can see some of the drill holes there. There's some interesting sniffs of copper gold porphyry style mineralization, but we know we're on the edge of the system. The heart of the system's over to the west, and we're waiting for a land transfer between the federal and state government to take place. And we expect that to happen in the next, hopefully the next quarter here. Whenever you get a new federal administration, then everything kind of slows down a little bit. The state has requested that this land transfer take place. This is a normal part of the transfer of lands from federal to the state government that has been ongoing for many years in Alaska. It's a slow process. So obviously, with the money we've spent here, the state knows that this is a priority for us, so they're working on it. Now over at Hona, again, good geochemical and geophysical targeting has been done there. We've got basically 3 areas identified there that will require some follow-up drilling. And then over on the Eagle prospect, earlier stage, we've only done stream sediment geochemistry there, but every stream for about 9 kilometers strike length is anomalous in gold and base metals. And you can see sort of the inset map there where we at the same level of survey and information level when we identified the Peak Gold anomaly. You can see the size of the Peak Gold anomaly. So you can see why we're excited about the Eagle areas. It's a big anomalous area that we've only done the preliminary work. So we've got to get boots on the ground this summer. And I'm looking forward to getting out there myself and doing some good old-fashioned prospecting. Main event, as I said, will stay focused, and Kinross will stay focused on advancing the Peak and the North Peak deposits through feasibility and getting the permitting underway, and then with construction in 2023 and then production 2024. That's a timeline I think we can count on. Certainly, Kinross is motivated to get this going. This is a significant contributor to Kinross Fort Knox operation. It basically doubles the size of production of the Fort Knox facility. So it is a pretty significant contributor for Fort Knox, but obviously for Kinross itself, since Fort Knox is Kinross's largest mine in the United States. I'll maybe wrap it up there. Again, I think we've got all the components. We've got a great deposit. We're on the road system. We have infrastructure. We have a great partner in Kinross, and we have a lot of exploration upside to come with our land position in the heart of the Tintina Gold Belt. And I'll stop here and see if there's questions.
It's a great presentation, Rick. Got a lot of people on here that have been investors in your companies before. Let's start with Mike Potter. Mike, question today for Rick?
Yes, I have. Thanks very much for a very illuminating talk, Rick. Is there going to be any pre-sorting of the ore before you truck it 400 kilometers down to Fort Knox?
Yeah, no, we don't think that's necessary. The ore kind of self-sorts itself in the sense that it's a massive sulfide ore. So you're kind of either in waste or ore. In these kind of deposits, it's not like it's a disseminated deposit where you kind of grade from high grade to medium grade to low grade. Not a significant difference in recovery from the oxide to the transition to the sulfides. We're getting high 90s to mid 90s to high 80s recoveries across that spectrum of oxidized to non-oxidized ores. So didn't really see a reason to do the ore sorting.
Okay, and mixing massive sulfide ore with which seems to be very different to the ore at Fort Knox, is that going to create any problems, or does it mix quite easily?
Yeah, and that was one of my questions to the Fort Knox folks, and they were very they've done a fair bit of work on this, obviously, and they wouldn't write a check for $93 million unless they had. They're very confident that the ore type is consistent with what they're processing at Fort Knox, and I think one of the reasons for that is because we're basically about 10% of what they normally put through the Fort Knox mill. So it is sulfide rich compared to the Fort Knox ore, but because it's only 10%, it doesn't change the overall chemistry that they're used for. And obviously, we are doing feasibility level metallurgy work now to know what amount of additives are necessary. And the main additive is cement, and that's to help buffer the solutions, both for the mill and and ultimately for the tailings facility. But they're not. I've asked them that question several times in several different ways, and they're not concerned about the compatibility of the ore, if you will.
Okay, thanks a lot. And to change gear a little bit, at Eagle, are those stream sediments draining off of a ridge crest? I couldn't quite see from that diagram. It looked as though they could be, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so the topography is a lot steeper on the north side of the Toke River, so it's a lot different kind of topographic features than say in the Tetland Hills, which is just kind of a series of low level hills and rolling hills. over at Eagle, it's steep mountains, and so we should see a lot of outcrop. Now, there's no question that you've got those steep drainages shedding off the hillsides, but it's pretty impressive that you've got sort of 9 kilometers of anomalous streams draining an area that has the same geology as we have at Peak in terms of it's the quartz mica schists and the interlayered calcareous rocks, and it's the calcareous rocks that form the skarn. So we kind of know what to hone in on. So I'm excited to get out there this summer. It's deep country. We're gonna be working off of ropes and things, so it'll be kind of slow going. We want to do it safely, but I'm hoping with all that exposure there, we can kind of quickly zone in on a couple of high quality targets.
Yeah, it certainly looks very interesting indeed. Okay, thanks a lot.
You bet. Thanks for your interest.
Thank you, Michael, as always. We'll turn to Matt Geiger. Matt.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Can indeed, Matt.
Wonderful. Thanks for the update here, Rick. I'd appreciate if you provided a little background on how you got involved with the story originally. If I'm not mistaken, the discovery was made kind of before you came into the fold. And I was interested in how you got involved, what attracted you to the story, at least at that point, and also how much of the company you own yourself at this point.
Sure, yeah, those are all good questions, and you're absolutely right. I had nothing to do with the discovery here. One of my best friends, Kurt Freeman, runs a consulting business called Avalon Development. I'll give you kind of the shortened version of the story, but it is kind of interesting that Contango Oil and Gas originally came up here to look for gas. In the late 2000s, there was a real push to build a gas line to connect to get Alaska gas down to and connect up to the Alberta gas fields and the BC gas fields. And the Tetland tribe recognized that their lands were right along that route. So they, through some connections, they reached out to a fellow named Brad Juno, who's our chairman, to say, hey, why don't you come explore for gas on our project? Because that's what he does. That is his business and his partner's business, Ken P. So they came up originally and met with the tribal leaders and the chief to look about exploring for gas. Quickly recognized that all the rocks in the region were high-grade metamorphic rocks, so no hope of any gas. But they got along quite well, and so they said, well, why don't we just try to find some minerals? And reached out to Kurt Freeman, who then they engaged his company to do the exploration work. So it was Kurt and his team, Chris Brown, and a few other geologists that found the original deposit, just doing basic prospecting and boots on the ground exploration. And then they unfortunately they spun it out to shareholders as Contango ORE, and Ken Peak was going to run it. Unfortunately, he passed away, and long story short, they brought they brought Royal Gold in as a partner, and then Royal really wanted to just focus on the royalty business, but they wanted to advance the project, and they were hoping to sell it. And eventually, it kind of got high-centered, in all honesty, because I think the deal was probably not structured the best to bring in a major company. And then when I decided that I'd kind of done what I wanted to do at Trilogy, I knew all the people because I knew Kurt, and Kurt had introduced me, and I'd sort of given them free advice along the way, some of which they listened to, some of which they didn't. But so when the opportunity came to get this thing off a high center, I thought this is going to be a fun project. It's a real project, and it's really has a chance of being a mine in the next 5 years. So that was my reason for joining the group. I like the people, and I like the project, and I thought I could use my skill sets to help sort of unlock the value here. And I know the people at Kinross. I used to be when I was at Placer Dome, one of the guys I worked with, Jeff Gold, who is a senior vice president at Kinross now. We got together and worked out the deal that we have today. So it's, like I say, it's a win-win deal. Great deal for Kinross. Gets more high-grade ore going through their mill, and great deal for us, great deal for the Tetland tribe. We get this thing fast tracked. They'll get their royalty. They have a 3 to 5% royalty. It starts at 3%, and as the over time and as the project pays its capital down, it increases to ultimately a 5% royalty. So they're going to do very, very well. And that's all in the all-in sustaining cost, incorporate the royalty both to Royal Gold and the royalty to the tribe.
Wonderful. That's really helpful color on the backstory. And then can you just touch on your ownership position as well?
Oh yeah, so I own I think it's just shy of 5%.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Okay. Quite good. And you touched on one of my other questions, kind of about the Royal Gold deal and the structure there. It kind of sounds like you probably wouldn't have gone about it that way had you had the reins at that point. But by bringing Kinross in and getting them out from the production level, you feel that's a good result.
Yeah, the 60-40 arrangement was always awkward, and I don't know, specifically what the overall logic was there. When you have a 40% owner who's the manager, that's always a bit of an awkward situation, and it was awkward for Royal Gold on their own to try to bring an operator into the company because they only controlled 40% of it. And anyways, long story short, we were able to sort of put the two sides together and align on bringing in a true mining operator. Again, Royal Gold's got a great business model, but they don't want to be operator. That's their whole business model is sort of based on that. So yeah, I think where we ended up is like I said, it's a win-win all the way around.
Perfect. Thank you, Rick.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt, as always. So we'll turn to Howie Flinker. Howie, anything come up for you today?
Hi, Rick. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to be informed or updated because we've talked before.
Yeah, no, good to hear your voice.
Same here. I'll see you soon.
Yep.
Thanks, Howie. We'll turn to Doug Loud.
Hi there, Rick. This is just always such a fascinating project. You don't have a lot of shares outstanding. Is there any way to get more shares out so that there's a little more liquidity? You're looking at that, especially with the New York Stock Exchange in your view?
Yeah, so that's it is an ongoing discussion. The listing is the main thing. We want to get listed on the American exchange. We think that's the right exchange for us. All the other companies we've run, Koji and Nova Gold, Let's Go, they're all on the Amex, or what used to be called the Amex exchange. So that's the first thing. Whether or not there's sort of pluses and minuses, different people's view on whether we roll forward the stock 2 to 1, 3 to 1, or whatever. We're discussing that, and that's a possibility. I think the main thing I want to do is get the shares up and trading on the American exchange, and we'll continue to have that internal discussion on whether we roll the stock forward 2 or 3 times. There's, like I said, there's some reasons that it's a good idea, and there's other reasons why some people think it's not the greatest idea. So
my other quick question was, listening to your description of your planning, do I understand that basically ultimately you start shipping ore to Fort Knox, you get money, and with that money you're a self-funded exploration reviewer of the other land and properties you have?
Yeah, I mean, just to go over some quick math. If we're producing 65,000 ounces net to the company at $750 an ounce, in rough numbers, that's close to $1,000 margin. So we're generating about $10 per share of cash flow, free cash flow. So once you paid off your debt, depending on if you financed it with some debt or something, and again, I think that's going to be in the $25-30 million range. The rest is free cash flow. You can dividend portion of that, and you can spend. If you dividended half of it and spent half of it, you still have a $30 million exploration budget, which is a pretty damn healthy exploration budget to have. Now you're going to spend some of it on the Peak Gold joint venture lands. To the best place to explore is right next to the ore body, as we all know. So we're definitely going to be doing that. And, our share, $3-4 million a year, you'd have a pretty healthy exploration budget on a 100% basis. And that leaves the rest of us to do exploration on our lands and to look at new opportunities. And of course, I know Alaska really well. I know it like the back of my hand. We're not limited to Alaska. I've run exploration programs all over the world. I'll probably stick close to home right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity in Alaska and a lot of opportunity in the United States, but and Canada, or I should say North America probably. But yeah, for right now, we're going to stay focused on getting and doing what we can to support Kinross getting Peak Gold into production as quickly as possible, and exploring on our 100% owned lands in a modest way right now. You don't need to go out and spend $10 million, but our exploration plans on our 100% owned lands is about $3 million this year. So now, good modest budget, but enough to be able to advance the Eagle and Hone and Triple Z projects.
That's really great. Fascinating. Thank you very much.
Rick, the royalty on your properties that you're exclusively exploring?
Yeah, good question. It's 3% to Royal Gold, and there's what's called a mineral tax in Alaska. So it's not really set up as a royalty, but it's a tax. But it's a net profits tax basically. So and it's 7% on state lands, but it's set up as a net profits.
Boy, 7%, that sounds pretty darn good compared to what I'm hearing from some places.
Yeah, I mean, Alaska has had a very stable taxation slash royalty and regulatory environment at the state level. So if you're not working on federal lands, you sort of have minimal involvement of the federal government, and that's the way I like to do things. But so and from a state standpoint, on state lands, that 7% profit. So it's like an NPI, net profits interest, basically. Calculates a little different, but that's effectively what it is.
I think that's how we all feel about the federal government. Let's turn to Chesley.
Thank you, David. Nice to hear from you again, Rick, and great project that you're working on here. Kinross is the one that's got the hand on the lever. And I guess the question that comes up, are they working on any parallel projects for a feed to the Fort Knox mill where they might make your project something less of a priority before you can get it all done?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm sure I know there are a few other things that they're looking at closer in, if you will, sort of right in and around Fort Knox. I'd say hands down, there's nothing that competes with us grade-wise, and you can't truck, 0.6 gram material, which is what they're currently mining at the Fort Knox mill. You can't truck 0.6 grams of material very far. So, and if you look around the Fort Knox area, the other companies that have resources, they're all low grade. They're all sort of gram kind of grades. And yeah, again, you just can't truck that stuff very far. So, in all honesty, I don't think we really have a lot of competition for delivering 4 to 6 gram material to the Fort Knox mill.
So I guess I'm a little confused about some of the numbers. I've heard something like 10% and something like doubling production. So what percentage of your feed will go towards, what percentage will it satisfy that deficit that they presently have at the Fort Knox mill? How much will they close the gap?
Yeah, there's no difference in the numbers I'm quoting, just different units. So when I say we're only 10% of the capacity of the mill. It's an 18 million ton a day mill, and they're running roughly, and this kind of varies from 9 to 12, they call it 10 million tons a year, will contribute 1 million tons of ore to the mill. Now, so that's the 10%, right? Rough, and we're talking about rough numbers here. So that's the 10% capacity of the mill. So we're not changing the scale of the mill at all. There's plenty of room in the 18 million ton a year mill. So when I say they were doubling the output of the mill, that's how many ounces you're producing. And the reason for that is we have 10 times the grade that Fort Knox is currently running through the mill.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're running about 0.65, and we're running 6 grams through. So there's the math for you.
That's comforting, actually, because they could bring on at the same time other projects and still have the capacity for yours as well as those others.
Exactly. There's plenty of capacity in the Fort Knox mill. Again, you can't truck 1 gram material very far. So not to point out anybody's deposit specifically, but there's several other known resources, sort of in a 10 kilometer radius around the mill. But you can't truck that stuff very far. So it's either got to be heap leachable, but you can't truck heap leach material very far either. So because it tends to be even less grade. So again, there's no other project in Alaska that I know of that's shovel ready, if you will, to deliver 4 to 6 gram ton material to their mill.
That's super. Just 2 more quick ones. You mentioned that the cash on hand is enough to get you to a production decision. Of that cash, how much are you able to allocate to the exploration of your 100% owned property?
Yeah, so this year we have a budget of $3 million, and these are all U.S. numbers. And I'm kind of guiding that we'll probably spend about the same next year on the properties that we have. So that's kind of what I'm seeing for the next 2 years, sort of a similar level of overall corporate spend on the properties that we have. Now, I'm an explorer and a deal maker by background, so don't be surprised if I come up with something else.
Oh yeah, that's my hope. And then finally, just let me add my voice to those who say that you're doing the right thing with a listing upgrade. That's absolutely a smart move as far as I'm concerned. Might even be able to trade options on you.
Yeah, hopefully one day that'll be the case. Yeah, it's certainly frustrating just seeing the I hate to call it dysfunction, but it's not a very friendly exchange in terms of for people to easily buy shares. You can do it if you kind of wade into it and focus on it, but it's you can't use your Robinhood app to push a few buttons and buy some shares.
Well, thank you once again.
You bet. Thanks again for your interest and questions.
Okay.
Scott, do we have any other questions?
We do actually. Let me just start this one. What is the royalty on the 3070 property?
Okay, yeah, so there's 2 royalties. One is what we call the underlying royalty to the landowner, which is the Tetland Tribe. So it starts at 3%, and then after 3 years goes to 4%, and then goes to 5%. So it's a scaled royalty that increases. Effectively, it's not written this way, but as you pay your capital off, it increases, and as you make a return on your investment, it increases. So that's the royalty to the tribe, and then there's just a straight-on 3% royalty to Royal Gold, and then Kinross has taken on. They had it's a bit of a side deal, is that Kinross has agreed to pay out of their share of the silver, 28% of the silver that comes out in the Doré bar. So just to kind of put some qualifiers around that, because 28% sounds like, oh my God, that's it's over a quarter of the silver. But the fact is that the only silver produced here is what's produced in the Doré bar. Fort Knox doesn't have a silver circuit. So it was a way of giving Royal Gold a little extra value in a form that they wanted it, which is in a royalty. And it was paid up front on our behalf by Kinross.
Understood.
We still get our, said another way, we still get our share of royalty of silver, which again, it's a relatively small number because it just isn't a silver circuit. So it's whatever silver ends up in the doré bar.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question, I'm going to combine two. One is, does Kinross, and the other one is, does the Tetland tribe have any options royalties on the other properties outside of the Peak Gold area? Can you explain that?
Yeah, no, short answer is on the non-Tetland lands, you have only the Royal Gold royalty of 3%, and this 7% net profits interest royalty to the state, which effectively is called a mining tax. That we were talking about that earlier. It's a 7% NPI effectively to the state of Alaska.
Understood. Thank you. And the final question from the audience is, Peak Gold has access to roads, but what about the entire land package? If discoveries are made elsewhere, how is the road infrastructure overall?
Yeah, so lacking, I'll say it that way. So it was fairly easy to access that northern part of the Tetland lands, which is why they started there, their early exploration work. So yeah, the rest of the lands are definitely a little more remote, and of course we're going to stay away from the lake and the wetlands associated with the lake. So that's actually a very big chunk of the lands. But there's kind of that, the rest of the horseshoe, if you will, that goes around there. You can access it from further south on the Alaska Highway. There will be an access point through there. And then over on the other side, the lands actually go over a major ridge, and there's another road on the other side of that you can access the very western part of the Tetland lands. So there's no question in my mind that for the next 5 years, we are going to stay completely focused on what we call the Chief Danny area, that area that I kind of highlighted. We had all the geochemistry and geophysics and all the work it sort of focused on that area. There's no question that that's where we're going to spend the next 5 years exploring.
Thank you. That's the questions from the audience. Appreciate those questions.
Okay, Rick, we're going to turn it back to you for closing remarks.
Again, thanks everybody for joining us today, and I just have this slide up here. If you have questions, please send them in to info@contangoore.com. Give me a call. Always interested to talk to investors and shareholders who are interested in our story. I think we've got a fantastic story. I'm excited about this story because I've worked on big projects that have big infrastructure challenges, and we've addressed those over time. But what I like about this one is I can see the near-term ability to generate cash flow, and so I've got some other ideas that I'm working on in Alaska that I think can fit this model really well, and I'll be excited to update you on those as we're able to put some of those ideas together. So again, thanks very much, and enjoy your, well, it's not quite the weekend yet, but enjoy it when it comes.
Very impressive, Rick. You do it again and again, and it's a pleasure to be with you and help popularize your success. I want to wish everyone a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Rick, I'm going to